One of the most important things to me, though, also with communication is remembering person first and the problem second. Because so much people come in with content, right? And they're like, I want to deal with this issue and I want to talk about this. And it's like we're forgetting about the person. And again, I know we've referred to this, the person, the histories, the like, what is really going on? So that eye contact and remembering person first is like a really good starting point with communication. Welcome to the Relationship Psychologist podcast, a place where we dive deep into all things relationships. I'm Dana Mullen.
And I'm Alicia Hinger, and we are soul sisters, besties, and psychologists who are on a mission to change the culture of relationships.
Each week, we will discuss our expertise in the field of psychology, interview experts, spiritual leaders, and real people. Our goal in every episode is to give our listeners tools to implement in their lives today.
This podcast is not therapy, nor should it be a substitute for therapy, but instead we're here to motivate, support, and guide your conscious journey in this life.
The best way to support our podcast is to subscribe and give it a 5-star review.
Thanks so much for joining. Let's dive in.
We're in different spots today, so this is different.
I know. I don't get to touch you. You just get to see your cute face.
I know. Thankfully, we're still in each other's eyes, though, because that's kind of what we're talking about today.
This is true. This is true.
Yeah.
And listening.
Yeah.
And communicating. Yes.
Totally. Yeah. I feel like we've kind of always wanted to do an episode talking about what we really do, which is couples therapy, and what people really come in with, which is communication.
Right. Well, they come in for all kinds of things, but often when we watch them in our session back and forth, it boils down to communication. Like I literally had a couple that just left my office, a few minutes ago, and they came in for some other complaints. And I paused and I've known them for a long time, so I can be a smart ass. And I paused and was like, this is your intervention. I use it all the time. I love it. I was like, pause, rate yourself right now on your communication skills. And they both were like, I'm a 7.5. And I laughed. I was like, wow, you're really good liars, or else you're just clueless. And of course they both started laughing. Like, why? And I said, well, what's the first rule about communication? And they're like, listening. I'm like, so rate yourself again. And they're like, right. Maybe a 1. I'm like, maybe a -1. Like there was 0 listening happening in the room. So yeah, they came in for something else, but as they were fighting about their hot topic, I was like, there's 0 communication actually happening in the room.
Right, yes. Right. And you just said that, Alicia, you're like listening, and the other piece about it is eye contact, right? And this is typically what we see is couples come in and they're facing us and we're like, look at each other. Yeah. And they're like,
I love that.
It's weird. I kind of want to look at you.
This,
and I'm
he said this, and I'm like, she's right there. Can you talk to your wife?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And so, I feel like the biggest thing that we can teach people, and the number one tool, first of all, that we just have to say is eye contact. I mean, this is the only time that you're in real time, the only time. Otherwise, you're in your head. And if you're in your head, you're dead. The minute that we look away, our brain is bringing up any memory that validates our current state. It's like, oh, remember when he did this? Remember when she did this? Remember? And then you turn and you look at them and then you attack. So if you stay in eye contact, you stay in real time.
Exactly. And not just bringing up memories of each other, bring up memories of every other experience where I felt this very familiar feeling of whatever that is, abandonment, rejection, ridicule, whatever. It's bringing up all this stuff. And then it's compiling into, now you're the proxy for all my past shit.
Yes, exactly. This is why we have to know who we're dealing with, right? I mean, as therapists, we're constantly getting histories and figuring out who are these people really. And as partners, people need to know that. Why is that person triggered by this? What's really going on?
Yeah. That's okay. So that's, I think, one point about communication that is probably overlooked a lot. So our podcast today obviously is on communication and how to communicate well with your partner, with your kids, with your coworkers, right? But I think that's one of the pieces that's really overlooked is, who are you dealing with? So as a person, the more I know you, and if you're a total stranger, this is obviously really hard to do, but if you're my partner, I ought to know more about you so I can be skillful in communicating with you specifically, because I know what your triggers are. I know your wounds. I know when you look dysregulated. I know how to soothe you when you're the more I know about you, the more skillful I can be in communicating with you specifically. And that's a huge part that's overlooked, I think, in lots of communication. People talk about listening. We'll get into all those things, which are really important, but we can start with a big one like that, because I think once you know who your person is, right? We call that attunement in our work. We can tune
Yes.
into, right? I can see your nonverbals. I can watch your breathing, and I know what Dana's breathing looks like when she's in a good, safe, secure space. I know what Dana's breathing looks like when she's out of her window of tolerance, and vice versa. Like even I called you earlier to practice our Zoom, right? You're like, you sound distressed. Just in my voice, you picked up in 5 seconds, in 1 second. And I was like, oh, I am. I only have 5 seconds. I got a client coming right now. So let's just do a quick Zoom, make sure it works, because you know my voice. And I talk fast anyways, but you picked up on my subtleties of like, you sound more distressed and a little faster than normal.
Yes, exactly. And actually, I love that you just said that, Leash, because that I know I'm going to butcher this name, but Albert Mehrabian, I don't know if I'm saying that right, but he's a researcher of body language, and he found that communication, 55% is nonverbal, 38% is vocal, so that tone and that energy, and 7% is words.
So say that again, 55%.
Yeah. Nonverbal.
Like just
30.
Wow.
Yeah. 38% vocal and 7% words.
Right. So over 80% of your communication is nonverbal, and just the sounds, the tones, the rhythms, the prosody, the air in your voice. So the big majority of your communication is nothing to do with your words.
93% exactly is what the research shows.
93%.
And so you're right. I think, well, we're not judging that. That's not what this is about.
Okay, good. Thank you.
But you're right. It's knowing your partner and their histories. And I know at some point we'll get into a podcast on that too. Just do you know your partner and get into some of the history. But even if you don't know your partner, you can still be watching them and going, oh, I noticed that you're biting your lip, or your eyes look kind of distressed or mean, or the sound or the energy of your body looks different. So, just that, am I actually watching you to know what's really going on with you? And am I aware of my own body? What's going on in my body? Because if I'm tense, that's not going to go so well either.
Yeah. I'm going to then trigger your neurons, your mirror neurons also get tense, just like with my horses, with animals, right? So if I tell people when they go to the horses, we have some basic rules. And one of the best things you can do when you're with them is to relax your body. So practice like lowering your shoulders. Don't wear them as earrings. Bring those shoulders down. Practice like some sighs or some like horse noise, like with your face. Practice yawning, doing some things to regulate your system. Because if you go through in that state, they're going to feel that state. So they're highly tuned in, right, to nonverbal communication, because they're nonverbal, obviously, and they're tuned into energy. So that's amazing. Like I knew those numbers were high. And we always say, I always just kind of arbitrarily guess a number. I'm like, well, I'm going to say more than 80. I'm going to say 93% actually of your verbal communication, or if your communication is non-words. It's not words. Because even our dogs, right? We can say the same word with different prosody and different tones and different air in our voice. We could say the same word, but they listen to the tone more than the word.
Exactly. I know right as we were starting, I was going to give you an example, which I think really pertains to this. So I want to say it because I don't know these people. So I'm walking my dog the other day, and I have a 9-pound miniature schnauzer. So she's tiny and she's friendly. And I'm walking her, and I'm on the phone with my mom at the same time. And somebody opens the car door. It was a young boy, about 12 years old. And so my dog jumped back, and the boy kind of yelled. And I was like, I'm sorry. And I looked him in the eyes, and I could see he was scared. So I was like, oh, I'm sorry. And I kind of pulled my dog away, and we kept walking. Then the mom got up and got out of the car and looked at me in like rage and said, get control of your dog. And instantly I could feel my arousal in my body going up, 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 up. And I had a moment where I was like, I could get defensive here, and I could say, calm down. Like, it's a little dog. And I had that moment of awareness of like, and then I remembered what I know, which is look at her eyes. I looked in her eyes, and I could see the protective mama in there. And I was like, you're protecting your little boy right now. And so I just looked at her and I said, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that my dog scared your son. I know that you're protecting him. I'm really sorry. And she settled fast. She was like, thank you. And I was like, that could have gone so differently if I wouldn't have even looked in her in the eyes, and I would have just kept walking, I would have started to banter something back to her in a defensive mode.
Right. Yeah. Speaking of dogs,
Yeah.
there's mine just checking us out right now in the podcast with
Aw,
us. Always in the
exactly.
podcast with us. Yeah. Right. So true. Like,
Always,
you're using your
always.
skill of watching her nonverbal. She was speaking very loudly to you in that moment, without even before she even spoke. Right. Or even used, if she had a different language, even you would understood her language because of her sound and mostly the look of her eyes and the way her body was portraying itself to you. And so
Yeah.
you applied skillful communication back to, like, because what is the goal? The goal is to, you can yell back, but then you're both out of your window of tolerance. You're both dysregulated. The goal is to be in that
Yeah.
window of regulation so that we can communicate, and hear each other and receive messages from each other. That's the goal of communication.
Exactly. And you've referred to this a few times, so we should probably explain to people what the window of tolerance is,
Right.
which is Daniel Siegel's work.
Yes, of course. I mean, just think of it like a square box or a window, right? And so how I describe it to clients, I just kind of draw the window, and I tend to draw like lines, and like within this window, you can kind of go up and down in this space where you can still be present and hear and respond and absorb and, be frontal lobe. I kind of use that frontal lobe like Dan Siegel's, top brain, where your frontal lobes are still online, have to make decisions and have social communication, that kind of stuff. When you're out of that window of tolerance, when you get too dysregulated, now you're in fight or flight or freeze. And so you're not making those good frontal lobe decisions anymore. You're in that limbic system. And like you said, you had that moment of like, I could go limbic here with this lady, with this mom, or I can stay social brain and go, oh, let me actually, which applies empathy, compassion, all kinds of really great skills you apply there. And I can then connect to her and soothe her in that moment to see and give her what she needs to hear, which is, I'm sorry, I see you.
Yeah.
I see
Yeah,
what's happening.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that way that you describe it. I always just kind of explain it as like when we're in that window of tolerance, both hemispheres of our brain are online. And so, we're able to be in some emotion and in some logic. But we're scanning, our brain is scanning for threat all the time. That's just part of being a human.
Yeah.
So if my limbic system is scanning for threat, if that amygdala is scanning and I get too high, my prefrontal cortex starts to go offline, and now I'm not tracking, I'm not sequencing, organizing, or storing information. So just always kind of remembering that, and that balance of, okay, am I within that? Am I still able to kind of think and feel, or is the feeling starting to take over in my body where I feel like I'm on fire?
Exactly. Do I feel, the word I use, do I feel hijacked? Do I feel hijacked by my limbic system?
Yes.
So I guess for a person listening to have some of their body cues of when they feel, it's like for me, when I'm getting hijacked, I almost feel like there's a bit of a ringing in my ears. I can hear that like ringing. I'm very sensual. So I feel ringing in my ears. My throat gets pretty dry, or I get a lump, or I feel like I can't speak in my throat. Obviously get the sweats, there's all kinds of like stuff that I can feel in my body when I start to get hijacked. And of course my voice goes up really, and I start to talk really fast and really loud. And I feel the need to defend. I feel really like puffy, like I want to defend, or as I'm an island, I want to shrink down and just avoid and be like, ooh, right. So those are kind of all my cues of getting out of that window of tolerance. What are yours?
Yeah. Oh, and I can feel my heart just starts to beat really fast, and I can feel the adrenaline going. It's like my adrenal glands are like, we're ready. We're ready for fight. And I get tense. I can feel everything in my body. My hands actually squeeze, like I tighten. Although I tighten in excitement also. So that's kind of a confusing signal. But I can feel it. It just feels like I'm going from 0 to 100 really fast. And then if I can catch it, if I'm really aware, I'll catch it before it gets above 50. And then I'm like, okay, I can override this because I'm aware of my body cues, right? I'm like, oh, I'm familiar with this. And that's where, for me, that's why I get back into the eyes. Every time I notice myself getting too high, and if I'm by myself and I'm just triggered for some reason, I'll get into an animal's eyes. So usually I'll grab my dog and just be like, okay, I'm just going to look at you and just like calm me down.
Nice. Or just start petting your animal, petting your cat. Yeah. For
Yeah.
like, again,
Yeah.
I'm watching your eyes as you talk too, and I can see the whites. Like as you're describing it, your eyes get more white rather than brown. So you can see, like that. So you can see, which again is what I look for in my horses. When their eyes get white, I know they're in distress, or my dogs too, when they're in distress. So a lot of things, if you have animals, you can look at a lot of this stuff in your animals and be like, oh, I noticed my animals. When this stuff, I ask parents all the time, I'm like, how can you tell when your kid or your child is in distress? And they're like, oh, easy. Now give me all these reasons why. I'm like, so you tune into your child. How can you tell when your partner's in distress or you're in distress? Oh, so I think these skills are built into us. We just get so, like I said, dysregulated or so busy, right? Or so defensive that we're not paying attention.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
It's not very skillful. So it's important it's work. I think it's acknowledgement of communication is a skill, and it's a skill that we have to acknowledge takes time and effort, and that it's a pain in the ass sometimes, because sometimes I don't want to communicate and I don't want to soothe you or stay. I want to lose it, but I'm choosing to be in a relationship, which means I'm choosing to be skillful, to apply the skills, to be 10 out of 10 as much as I can, because I deserve it and you deserve it too.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I think that, I'm looking a bit at my notes too. And I know that we've said this eye contact. I mean, I feel like this is the one of the most important things to me, though, also with communication, is remembering the person first and the problem second. Because so much people come in with content, right? And they're like, I want to deal with this issue and I want to talk about this. And it's like we're forgetting about the person. And again, I know we've referred to this, the person, the histories, the like, what is really going on? So that eye contact and remembering person first is like a really good starting point with communication.
Oh my gosh, that's like paramount. Like if you take nothing from this podcast, take that away. Person first, content second, third, fourth, content fifth, maybe. Like content is way down the board. Like people think that we need to solve the problem, and actually they come to us to solve their problems lots of times. And we'll both say to people, I'm not here to solve your problems. I'm here to teach you how to solve them yourselves. And I'm going to teach you that put the relationship first, each other right first. You can have a relationship where you can be right, but you can't have both sometimes.
Yeah.
What do you choose? What's more important
exactly.
to you? Do you want the relationship or do you want to be right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, a secure relationship is the relationship is right, right?
Yeah.
That comes first. If you want to be right, you want to be self-righteous, it's insecure every time.
Yeah. Okay. Let's play with this. Maybe you and I could like give an example. So let's think of a topic that we disagree on. That's a real one. Do we have one? What do we disagree on? Probably nothing really, but what do we disagree on? Maybe we can make one up. How about, I know that you should get a cat. You can like That's maybe funny. Play a little harder than you want to play, because I know you kind of want one maybe, or I'm going to convince you that you need one. So backstory.
So you want to role play. Okay. Well, okay. Okay. So let's do that then. And let's pretend that we're a couple then. Okay. So we're a same-sex couple and we would like, and you want to get a cat and I don't want to get a cat.
Yes. And we have a daughter, her name is Alicia, and Alicia really wants a cat because that's going to be my entrance into why we should have this cat. So I'm going to bargain with my kid, which people do with our kid.
Okay. So we're going to bring in a third now. Okay. Well, tell me, Alicia, why you think that it would be really good for our family to have a cat. I really like to hear kind of your perspective.
Okay. So let's role play first what not to do.
Okay.
Let's role play bad communication skills. So bringing in a
let's
third.
do that quickly because people do this all the time.
Okay. So bringing in a third. So I could be like, well, if you really loved our daughter, she really loves cats. You know how much Dana, you know how much she loves cats. Aaliyah is an animal person. She comes to the farm and she loves it. She adores cats. If you really loved her, you'd get her a cat. It's not even for me. Of course, I want one too, but it's really for her. And any good mom would know that. So I'm guilty. Yeah.
I can feel my arousal going up and being like, oh, so I'm a bad person. Yes. So now you're attacking my character and who I am and what I believe in because I don't agree with you. Exactly. So now I want to attack back and just say, well, you're being ridiculous. And it's not fair that you're bringing in our kid and saying that I'm not thinking about the kid, or I don't love the kid enough to want to get a cat. I don't like cats. And that's not fair for you to do that.
Yeah. And then I can feel being like, I'm ridiculous. Fine. I'm always ridiculous. It's fine. And I can feel my right. If I'm like role playing in my body, I could feel a little bit of arousal. I mean, it's obviously a little, but I can manifest it to be like, I'm ridiculous. What will my island self do? Fine. Whatever. I'm not talking about it with you. You just be you. And Ali and I will just never have a cat, I guess. And there's my avoidant face and my avoidant voice, my dismissive gestures.
And I would probably just shut down and leave and just walk away and be like, hey, fine. You guys go and get a cat then.
Right? And then we live on separate islands, and then we come to a therapist and be like, she never listens to me. Yeah, people do this all the time. They bring in, outside reasons. Okay, so now let's role play the same fight with skillful communication. Okay. So okay. Want me to start again?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Tell me.
Okay. Sweetheart, I love you so much. And I know we disagree about things, and whatever the outcome of this is, I just want you to know, no matter what, I'm a stubborn ass, and I know that I want things that I don't always get my way, and I'm going to argue for something that I really want. And I know you might disagree, and that's okay, but I want you to know whatever happens, that we're still good and I still love you so much. And I feel like all warm and fuzzy, even just saying that.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of true.
That's nice. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel a little bit more open right now to hearing what
Yeah.
you have to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you obviously know, Ali and I love animals, and wherever we go to people's farms, we are so drawn to cats. And I just think, I know it's probably not good timing. It never probably is good timing. I just think I'd love us to discuss some point if there's ever an option for us to bring in a little furry cat to our house someday, or what your thoughts are on that.
Know that you two both love animals and specifically cats. I know you both do. And
Yeah.
I know that you would really love to have one. And
Yeah.
I really want to validate that because I know that you guys really love that. And I know that I'm a bit hesitant to enter the conversation about it because I have my own kind of feelings about cats, and they're dirty and they're unpredictable and I don't know, they don't seem very cuddly to me. So I know that I'm holding kind of my own history around what I feel about cats, but I feel open to the conversation. I just feel like we need to talk more about what it actually looks like the vision of what this would look like in our family, because we don't live on a farm and we
Yeah.
don't have all of that space. And so I just feel like it's different than when we go to the farm. We're like city people. And so I just want to hear more of what you think it could look like for our family. Like I'm open to the conversation. I just can't see it. That's
Yeah.
why I feel like I'm so blocked when we talk about it.
Yeah. And just as you're talking too, I'm like, appreciate your openness, but you're right. They are dirty and we don't live in the city. And the points you're making are valid and they're true. And I didn't even consider some of those. And yeah, we have to discuss, I didn't really think about the fact that they bring in fur and they bring in dirt and there's a litter box. And, I just kind of am so drawn to the cat and the benefit of it that I didn't think about those points you just made. So yeah, I think it would be great to negotiate and discuss those points and if it's even realistic for our family. And yeah, I appreciate that you brought
Yeah.
those to my attention.
Yeah, I feel like the goal for us would be to find kind of a win-win, because I
Yeah.
don't want to feel like either one of us are compromising to be like, oh, I have to not do this because you don't want it. I really
Yeah.
want to find a win-win of maybe maybe this can work. I just need to know more about what does it actually look like, and how could it fill into our
Yeah.
family. So
Yeah. And so maybe what I might offer, and that would be say, you know what, I'm going to go do some research. I'm going to go get on the YouTube or on the internet or whatever and research like germs that cats bring in that I never thought about, what a litter box looks like, how to keep it cleaner, what are the types of litter we could get. I'm going to go and do some research on some of those things. And then I'll come back with some more information and then we can maybe negotiate further.
I love it. I
Right.
mean, that feels so good for me because it feels like you're not just coming in with like an agenda of, I want this. You're actually coming back with like, let me do a little bit more research and then we can have another conversation. And that feels awesome for me. I'm totally on board with that.
Right. And I'd be like,
Love
I
it.
just love talking to you. I love, even though we don't agree about stuff, that we're open to each other's feedback and influence. And I just love talking to you about all the things. I feel so safe talking to you about things, even though I know we're going to disagree on stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like the thing to know, that like to point out some of the stuff that we're doing, Alicia, for people to know is that first off, we're validating each other's feelings.
Mhm.
So like number one, no matter what, your feelings are valid. Even if I don't agree with your feeling that you love cats and that you think that they're the greatest pet ever, I can still validate that feeling in you and say,
Yeah.
I know you love cats.
Yeah.
And then I can take accountability for my perceived or your perceived threat of me not wanting a
Right.
cat, right? So I take the
Right.
accountability of, I know I don't love them. I know I'm the one holding us back.
Yeah.
So I'm acknowledging kind of that accountability of how I'm being perceived. And then I'm reassuring you in some way of like, I'm open to it. I just need more information. I need more of a vision of
Yeah.
how this could look in our family. So that validating and taking accountability and some reassurance already, like that's really what we're trying to do. And then you did the same thing back with
Yeah.
me.
Exactly. I was going to say the exact same thing back. So I validated your experience. I was accountable that maybe I was a bit overzealous about this cat idea without really considering your concerns. I didn't really actually know your concerns up front until you told me. So yeah. So, and then reassuring that I'm going to validate your concerns. I'm going to come back with information about, and we'll keep negotiating, and maybe it won't happen. Maybe it will, but yeah, there's so many layers of paying attention. Right. And as you're talking, I'm watching you lean forward and I'm watching you nod and I'm watching your voice stay calm and I'm watching you, and I'm actually watching curiosity come through your voice. Like I'm watching like genuine, authentic curiosity, genuine care. Like I'm feeling all of those, 93%, I'm feeling all of those things land in my system. So it feels like a back and forth, and negotiation is that. Negotiation isn't, I'm going to fight to the death at for my point. Negotiation is, I'm not going to compromise and cave either. I'm going to negotiate in a safe, secure space where our relationship is more important than any content. I'm going to negotiate,
Yeah.
with my truth, with my ideas, but I'm also going to hear yours. I'm going to be influenced by you back towards me, because that's what relationship is.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I like that you were just saying that. It's like remembering that this relationship is this is our sacred space, right? I
Yeah.
mean, this is we talk about the couple bubble. This is your ecosystem. So
Yes.
if I'm not aware of you and taking care of you, then if you're not well, I'm not well. Our
Yeah.
relationship is not well. So it just when we're communicating, if we're really focused on the person as opposed to the content, right? If we would have just focused that on the content, I would have been defensive saying,
Yeah.
this is ridiculous. Come back with information. Like, this
Right.
is stupid. Like, you should do your research before you come to me, which is typically what we'll hear couples say, right? Is
Yeah. Yeah. And
focusing
I
on
might
that
say something
content
like,
where,
yeah, I might be defensive back and be like, well, I already know everything. I already did my research, which probably I didn't, or maybe I did, right? Instead of being like, what is your concerns? Like, let me actually hear your concerns. And then if we were going further, I'd be like, what are your concerns about germs? I'd like me actually hear what that concerns for you. Like, or what are your concerns about whatever else that your concerns are? Like, let me understand for you what that means for you. I don't want to assume that I know what that
yeah,
means. I want to keep asking. So I think as you're negotiating, keep getting curious about your partner's concerns or whatever they're saying back. Because usually I don't know about you, but I would say like 99% of the time people come in with whatever their concerns are, they're negotiating, they're communicating, and it's never that
yeah,
thing. It's a thing behind the thing behind the thing. Like, it's usually like 2 or 3 levels behind what they're saying it is that it actually is.
mm,
Man, like
yeah,
just tonight again, in my example tonight, my couple tonight, they were fighting about something, and it wasn't even that. She was asking for, they were actually both fighting for connection, actually both fighting for the
yeah,
same thing, and which happens all the time, but they were stuck on a different
yeah,
content, stuck on like, well, you never
yeah,
call me and you never check in and whatever, stuck on these things. And I'm like, so as I peel back the layers, get to them, be like, you're actually fighting for the same thing here. And then when that gem shows up like in your face, that little gem of like emotion, that little like way just show up in your face,
mhm,
that's what I do. I'm like, did you see that in her face? I'm like, go be with her for a second. Go be with her. Because what you're
yeah,
fighting for is that piece. I just shut up and go and be like, bring your face to her, being like, I miss you. I'm just fighting so
yeah,
hard because I just miss you. I just need some connection. You're like, me too.
yeah.
And then the
It
conditioning.
is.
Yeah.
Oh, and then yeah. I mean, and couples will know this when they feel like they're communicating well, they feel connected. I mean, people always say this, right? They're like, when it's good, it's good. And when
Yes.
it's not good, it's not
Not
good.
good. Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, when it's good and you feel connected, life is easy. Even if you have a
Easier.
struggle and a stress, it's like, this is so much easier. But when we start to feel disconnected, then everything starts to go down. And I know even in, I think our last podcast, you were talking to a young girl who has chronic pain, and she said, one of the things that she, heals with her chronic pain is connection, and connection is everything. So
Yeah.
behind communication is usually couples who are feeling massively
That's
disconnected
good.
and likely not always safe and secure in their relationship, just not feeling like they have each other's back and that they're in each other's care.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And just to use the example of tonight, was resentment. And so I called them out. I think this is common. Like, I learned this early in my marriage. My husband's a big NFL fan, like loves football. And so I'd come home from like a long day of work, or I'd be working, with a baby on my lap. So I've got my, my car seat, and I take them to work, and I come in and I'm like, you're watching football? Like, I just like worked 8 hours with a baby on my boob and on my lap, whatever, and managing all the stuff and I remember feeling so resentful. And I had to pause, through working with a therapist and doing stand stuff too, to be like, but that's on me not asking, instead of being resentful at him, because he's actually doing what he needs to do, which is to fill his cup. And that's how he fills his cup. And I was so resentful, like so mad. Like, I used to hate football for that reason, to pause and be like, oh, I love that you're taking care of yourself right now. I'm really exhausted. What I really need from you would be really great if when you have time, or whenever we negotiate, I need time too. So how can we
Yeah.
negotiate that and make that work? So those like death by 1,000 resentments. I think it's a relationship killer. It's a death by 1,000
It
resentments.
is.
The little ones that start here grow into these massive ones. I had another couple yesterday,
Yeah.
one couple, and she made a little slide. It was just like a little side comment. Just they're coming for some just early marital, just going to get the couple bubbles, which I love. And she made a little slide comment about as they were like leaving the room, about sex. And she said, well, he likes it more than I do. So, and she kind of rolled her eyes and was like, but it's fine. I'll just like, I guess, do what he wants to do. And I was like, oh, we're bringing that up next session, because that's a little resentment that I saw in your face and in your nonverbals. And I said to him, did you see what she just did? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, don't ignore those nonverbals, because those are going to grow into massive
Yeah,
resentments later on. So we're going to bring that up next session. We're
totally.
going to negotiate and talk about your sex life.
Yes, you said a couple things I want to touch on. One, and I had a couple, or I had an individual today. We were talking about the couple stuff though, but the resentment piece. You have to be in communication. You have to be aware of your own energy and arousal as much as the other person. So when you notice that come up and you're like, oh, I'm feeling resentful, that's a really important thing to talk about with your partner when you're in a calm and good state, to say, you know what? I notice a part of me is resentful. I come home, or you come home from work and I see you sitting in front of the TV playing video games or watching sports, and I've been alone with the kids all day or whatever it is, or exhausted from work, and I'm getting resentful and I don't know what to do. And so being aware of that with yourself so you can bring it up, but also planning and predicting. This is what I said to my client today. I was like, you have to plan and predict this. You know, if that's your husband's go-to to, zone out in front of the TV, when you guys are in a good place, talk about that and say, hey, I notice when that happens, that triggers me. Can we talk about how do we manage each other when that happens? Like, what can we do? Like, how can I say something to you to say, hey, this is a moment I need you, or even greetings, when you come in the door, when you greet each other, you're connecting. That's an important communication piece.
Yeah. And that's when you could check in too, right? Like, how was your day? It was exhausting. Ooh, do you need me to take the TV off and come help you for a bit? Or can I take another time out for 20 minutes and then come help you? Like, where they can negotiate then, what do you need? And then just speak your truth. Because I think resentment really is a really key part of what's happening for me and what's my stuff that's coming up that I need to take care of. It can be a boundary. It could be a need. It could be a desire. It could be, and it's often, of course, too, I think whenever there's resentment, it's often, again, knowing your partner and also knowing yourself. I think another key part of communication is really knowing you, like knowing your own stuff, your own triggers. And so, if you have a history of pleasing or history of like not having good boundaries, you're going to feel resentful often because you don't know how to put that self-love in place to take care of your own boundaries, which is a whole other topic we'll get into later. But right. So knowing yourself, and even if you don't know how to communicate that really well, communicate and be like, I'm not even sure what this is. I'm not even sure, but when I watch you do this thing, I feel this thing in my stomach, and I'm not blaming you. I'm just saying it's there and I want to negotiate. I want some support and help about how do we take care of this? Or can we go see somebody to help us negotiate this? Because I don't want that to become a problem later on. I don't want that to fester into a rotten part of our relationship. I want it to fester into, I want to grow this relationship, not kill it.
Exactly. And I mean, you said part in there also, and I think that that's another piece of communication too, is using kind of parts language, right? Like, I notice a part of me is feeling like this right now. It's not all of you, not all of me is resentful towards you. A part of me feels some resentment because of whatever reason. And so then, you can validate and you can see into that part of your partner. Wow, I can see why a part of you would feel like that.
Yeah.
And then that disarms the nervous system. And it's like, hey, now I'm feeling seen and heard and understood by you. I'm feeling more safe. I feel like I can open up more. So that's huge. And going back to that, just one other, and I think we talked about this one other episode, but when you come home and if you are feeling that, like, I'm exhausted, like I'm stressed out, I've had a day, letting your partner know, check in and let them know where you're at before you get home. Like that, in my relationship, we will text because we have an agreement that we can text that. We'll say, hey, just so you know, I'm at 10%, or I'm at like this is what's going on. So then we can now predict this and we know how to take care of each other.
Yeah, no, I think that's brilliant. Having a text or if you can't text, is when you get in the door as soon as possible, be like, I'm at 10%, just so you know. And if they're like, I am too, be like, okay, now we both know we don't have very much to give. So we're just going to negotiate. Okay, we got to feed the kids. We got to feed the dog. We got to do this thing. So let's just, be gentle with each other about how we can get through. We have to get through them. And then we can also leave the dishes and we can leave. What can we leave?
Yeah.
There's, if they're 10%, we can't get everything done. That's just, I got 10%. I can't make it to Calgary in my car. I can make it, to Coldell.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So knowing what I can actually do is realistic at 10%.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So many little.
I'm curious in terms of the kind of the tone and the volume, because you're a fast talker, and that doesn't always mean that you're aroused, because you just naturally are a fast talker, right? So sometimes that can mean that you're aroused, but some of that can just mean that you're excited, because for you, when you get excited, you talk fast.
Yes.
I'm curious, in your relationship, Alicia, what do you do when you notice, and you could say for one of your kids or your husband, kind of stick with that rather than a client. But what do you do when you notice a nonverbal in one of your people? Like, how do you tune into it? Like, what would you say if, like, your husband, let's say, if you notice that he's dysregulated, and you can just see it in his nonverbals, what do you do?
Well, we use parts language in my house quite a bit. So I will usually verbalize that part. I'll be like, oh, I just noticed that part of I just noticed, right? I noticed your eye twitched. I noticed like your neck is red. I noticed you're holding your breath. Like I'll verbalize the parts. A part of you is holding this thing, right? With my husband, I'm much more gentle. We're smart asses too. With my kids, I think I can, they grew up with these language. So they grew up, that's part of their normal language. With my husband, I don't want to be his therapist. So with the kids, I can be like, oh, a part of you's pissed. I can say it to my daughter and she's like, right. We have very clear language with each other. With my husband, I could say, I'll be more gentle and be like, I'll try to soften it with him. I think of an example the other day. We were at the table and, he came home. Oh, I know what it was. He came home and he was asking me about some family stuff and he kind of just dropped, he was obviously in his head and he was really busy and he'd thinking about this all day and dropped a kind of a little bomb on me at the table. And the kids in there were just starting to sit down and eat dinner. He happened to come home late and he just dropped this little bomb, walked away. And I kind of was like, kind of stunned by it. So he came back. I kind of held it and was like, had a long day. Hey. And I'm like, I can see that you're looking exhausted. And he was like, I'm fine. And I'm like, but cause he's a, go getter. And so I kind of softened with, I can see all of you first. And then I slowly backed into, I know when you've had a hard day and you're just such a caretaker that these little bombs sometimes go off and I know what that is. And so I kind of soften it with him in some ways. Okay. So, and then, then he's like right away, like, oh, I didn't mean to. I'm like, I know, right? It's not personal. Yeah. No. Another part too, is I recognize that when people are in their stuff, self included, it has nothing to do with you. It has to do with my stuff and what I'm in. So same with my husband, when he comes home and he drops little bombs, I could be attacked and be like, well, that was asshole move. Or be like, okay, so what would cause him, this person that I know is a kind human being, what would cause him to drop a bomb like that in my house? Because that's not who he is. Something must be happening for him. So give him that grace.
Person first.
Yeah, person first, right? Doesn't mean I would take abuse or I would take it doesn't mean I would have boundaries with like if he was abusive or saying mean things. It wasn't like that. But I can pause and be like, there must be something going on for him. And I know I'm good enough to know what his triggers are and what he's taking care of that causes him to get distressed. So I get to pick one or two of those things that are probably what's going on for him to be like, okay, it's work overwhelmed or it's family overwhelmed. I can pick one of those two things. And he can land and be like, yeah, this is happening. And then he gets to, describe what's happening for him and then I go back to the topic of like, so when he dropped that little bomb, I understand why he did it. Mm-hmm. However, it still is triggering for me. It still would have been nicer to hear it like this. Those are my parts.
That's so nice. Yeah. I mean, it's really important, I think, for us to get our partners, like what soothes them. And I like how you said that. You're like, with my kids, I might be a bit more therapist-y. Like I might, just say it in a different way. But with my husband, I kind of soften. So, kind of what he needs to soothe him, because when you come soft to him, he softens. Totally. Right. And so I think it's important for couples. And if you don't know your partner's stuff, like you don't know their facial expressions, then check, like at the beginning, check and be like, hey, I notice your eyes are getting big, or like, what's happening? Like at first it's okay to ask questions. The goal is eventually to know each other so well that we use statements rather than questions, because questions is tapping into our thinking brain. And it's like, how do I feel right now? But a statement is like, oh, I see sadness on your face. And then you're like,
thank you. Yeah. And questions are, I don't know, which is fair. But eventually, if you're married 21 years, you kind of ought to know at some, at some point, you ought to know some stuff about your partner the more you've been with them. And I've been with my husband for a long time. So I feel like I know most things. It's fair for me to guess. And I think at this stage of the game, I ought to be guessing a bit about what's happening for him all the time. But for new couples, absolutely check in and ask. I saw your eyes, and they're like, oh no, I just got dust on my eyes today at work. Oh, okay. I thought you looked sad.
Mm-hmm. Right? Listen to that intuition. I think that a lot of people kind of turn that off in life. Like they're like, oh, I kind of want to ask that question, but I'm not going to, because that's awkward. Or I don't, maybe it's not my business, or, like new couples just being like, I don't, is it too much to ask? Be curious about people though, because curiosity is a communication skill also, of just, I'm so curious about you. I'm wondering, why do you nod your head like that? Or why do you, sigh, or do you do that thing with your hand? I'm noticing you tap your hand, or whatever it is, like just curiosity in a loving kind of connecting way. Yeah,
for sure. When in doubt, absolutely. When in doubt, go curious in a loving way, not in a demanding, like you're not interrogating, but when in doubt, you're not really sure what to say, go curious and be like, so it sounds like this, or I'm seeing this, but I might be wrong. So help me understand. Like, I'm just going to be until I exhaust, till I feel like I fully understand. Why would I want to rebuttal my point of view if I have no idea what I'm rebuttaling against? So keep asking, get curious and ask your partner their questions until you're like, okay, I think I fully get what your point of view is. It's this, right? And you're like, no, I'm like, okay, tell me again. Sorry, I missed that. Or until they're like, yes.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay. So now I fully understand because I've been curious enough to ask enough questions of what your point of view is. Then I go, okay, I hear you. And I understand for you, right? Empathy, that's how it feels for you. I might not agree with that, but I understand from your point of view what that feels like for you. Validation. Excellent.
Yeah.
And then when ready to switch, be like, okay, I want to tell you my point of view. Ready to listen to mine, which is very different from yours.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
And so you're
exactly.
just, like the word you said earlier, we're disarming those defense systems. We're disarming. That's another goal is like, what words can I say? What gestures can I make? What facial expressions what tone of voice can I use to disarm my partner's defenses? I don't want to fight with their defenses. I want them to hear me. I want them to hear what I have to say is important. I want them to hear. So how can they hear me when they're defensive? They can't.
No. Yeah. No, it's not possible. And I mean, if you notice your own energy and your own arousal, and if you're like, I'm getting defensive, I mean, sometimes taking a time out, I would suggest to people, try not to go longer than 20 minutes. It doesn't take the brain longer than 20 minutes to calm down. Try not to leave the house. For some people, that's threatening and that will feel like abandonment. But be aware enough to be able to go, I have to protect my partner from myself because I can feel my arousal getting up and I'm going to get defensive.
Yeah.
Or if you're a bit more self-aware and you're somebody who already maybe practices yoga or meditation or just, self-awareness and self-regulating, lowering your body, sit on the floor. And I mean, that's what I do. When I can feel myself getting aroused, I go to the floor as quick as I can. And then when I feel ready, I welcome whoever I'm in conflict with. I'll say, come sit with me.
Yeah.
And then now I'm creating kind of a visual of like, this is our bubble and we're sitting in here and our goal is to repair, not to keep going in the conflict of whatever we're talking about.
Yeah. I like that idea of a container. So you could even say, right now, I just need a second to regroup. Let's carry this out in the backyard. Let's give ourselves 5 minutes and let's like continue this in a different spot. So it's a new location, new container. Maybe this space is too arousing for whatever reason. Right. But it's trial and error. It's got to be improv too. Like it's right. If like you said, real time is too fast. We get to slow it down and be improv and be like, this isn't working, but this is important and you're important to me. So let's pause and try again. Or the words I said came out too fast. Hang on. That's not what I meant to say. You already heard those words, but let me try that again. Pause and try again.
Try again.
Yeah. Improv. Keep moving. Keep playing.
I mean, and that's what we do as couple therapists, right? I mean, we're getting people to redo things sometimes over and over again. So they're creating a new memory. This is like the neurons are going to start to wire together differently if you keep trying it differently. Don't give up. People say, well, I said sorry. I said, I'm sorry. Yeah. And now I'm done.
With
and
those
it's like,
wide eyes
wow.
and that voice.
That was beautiful, wasn't it?
I was like,
I'm so sorry right now.
I know you're sorry about
it's like, no, look, just a sec. Yeah. Let's try that. Let me try that again. And it's like, instead, I'm going to try this until it lands. I think that's another big kind of piece that I always tell people too, is like, you got to make sure it lands. Check with them. You can even use the words. Did that land? I mean, sometimes you can tell, but sometimes people be like, no, not fully. Okay, let's try it again. I mean, like, be patient or help your partner and say, here's what I need you to say. I need you to say, I have every right to feel like this, and that you're sorry. That's what I need you to say.
Yeah. Right. Sure. Fair enough. Absolutely fair enough. So did it land? Or I'll often be like, is she buying what you're selling? Like, look at your partner. Is she buying it? Because look at her face and she's, rolling her eyes or she's twirling her hair. She's looking elsewhere. I'm like, if they say, I'm like, look again, like I'm obviously communicating, like she's not buying. So sell it, like say it so that it lands, so that she's buying what you're selling. When you say sorry, she's going to buy it. Otherwise they're just plain words. But on the other thing you said, repeat I did that with my husband one time. I was again, long day at work and I backed up my truck into the big green behind my office, the big green trash can thing. And like, was mad, obviously. So I backed up and I was like, oh, it dented my bumper. It wasn't huge, but it was enough to annoy me. I got home and I was like, I don't need you to say anything. What I need you to say is, it's totally okay. And he's like, what? I'm like, just say that first. And I'm gonna tell you what I did. And then he was like, what did you do? I'm like, I backed my truck into the green garbage can. And he's like, it's going to be okay. And I'm like, thank you. That's all I need you to say. Now let's move on to the next topic. He was like, laughing.
Well,
I'm awesome. Lecture. I'm going to train you ahead of time. I want you to say this as your response. Yeah. Because I don't need you to tell me how to fix it, or I don't need you to give me advice. Like, I already know how to fix it. I know that was a mistake. I already know all that stuff. I've already all the self-talk in my head of what I need to do and all the shoulda, coulda, woulda is in my head. I don't need to hear it from somebody else.
Oh my gosh. That's awesome. You know what? I have to say this. You just triggered a memory for me that I totally forgot that I did. When I was 16, The only accident that I've ever been in, oh no, I've been in a few little ones, but I rear-ended somebody and came home and my car was fine. Like we got it all off, all the rubber that was on the car. But I came in and I said to my parents, I'm like, okay, so I need you guys to sit down. I need you to know that I'm okay. I am okay and I'm safe and nothing bad it has happened. Everything is okay. Everything's okay. And
Right.
like I set that stage and they were like, okay. And I was like, I got into a car accident, but everything's okay. And they were like so much more open because I just set this tone of like,
Right.
everything's okay. Nobody's hurt. Everything's okay. So
Yeah.
it's like, I love that you just did that though too.
Yeah.
You were like, you just have to say everything's okay. That's
Yeah.
all I need for you to say. And then I'm like, okay,
Okay.
now, because that's person first again, right? It's like just
Right.
take care of this person and then the content will follow. We will
Yeah.
figure it
We'll
out.
figure that out later. I need to tell you something, but I
Yeah.
need you to make sure that we're good first. So I feel okay, good first. Yeah. Which is just, you know, I think part of your communication skills as you grow into better communicators in life is knowing self and having love for
Mhm.
self, right? And asking for what you need, being
Yeah.
authentic and being truthful. Like, I need you to be, I need you to
Totally.
just sit down on the couch and everything is okay. And so I don't need you to freak out because that's not going to serve anybody here. So I need, you know, and what I need is
Mhm.
X, Y, and Z. And then I'm going to tell you the
Yeah.
situation. Yeah. So that's good
Yes.
self-awareness.
It is. And then you're not self-abandoning, right? I mean,
Oh,
to stand in your truth and your integrity and your value of what it is that you need. Too many people just get by and just say, well, I don't want to be needy or my partner said he can't meet my needs or she can't do this thing that I really want. It's like you need to work through that though. Is that a deal breaker? Is that something that's going to break you guys up or is that something you can work through, but don't get yourself being small to
yeah.
keep a relationship going.
Yeah. Because it's never going to last. Or
No.
maybe it will last, but the safe security of the relationship won't last. It creates insecurity. Right. So yeah,
Yeah.
this is you saying, like, I think of 1,000 examples in my head of couples that we've dealt with over the years, right? Of self-abandoning, of like, well, I'll just do it because. And then, like, even I can't even
Yeah.
say that without my body, you know, going into that, like, that
I
body
know.
pose of like abandoning feeling. Right. Yeah. So I think part of communication isn't just with your partner, it's knowing yourself, your needs, your desires, your stuff, and having enough knowledge and love for self, which is a boundary. Self-love is a boundary
Yeah.
to ask what you need. And I think that what leads into resentment, like we talked about earlier. Then if I feel resentful, that's myself talking to myself. That's me talking to myself about what is it that I need that I'm not getting, that maybe I'm not asking for. And
Mhm.
rather than outsource and portray and blame somebody else, which is just a discharge of emotion, that's all blame is, right? I'm gonna actually own my stuff
Yeah.
and ask for what I need from you or somebody else.
Yes. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm the
Yeah.
parent and
I think that's a skill that yeah, I think I was just gonna say, Alicia, I think that's a skill that you get I mean, hopefully as you age, but as you keep coming into this is who I am and I'm not going to be ashamed of who I am and what I need. I'm just going to state it. And if you have a partner that's receptive, even if they disagree,
yeah,
but they can still validate you and be like, "Hey, let's make space for that and let's figure out that." I'm open to that. I think that that's what we want for couples that we work with. The goal, I think, is to create collaboration with the couple, right?
yes,
To create this mutuality and this fairness and justice of like, we
yeah,
want you both to feel this. Like that's the goal.
yeah,
There's not going to be a right or a wrong necessarily. It's going to be what is win-win for this couple? What does that look like? That might not be win-win for you and I in our relationship, but
yeah,
how did they create that bubble, that security of like we've got each other's back no matter
yeah.
what?
Yeah. How do they negotiate? Sometimes good enough. It's not perfection
Yeah.
sometimes. How do they negotiate? I'm willing to bend and negotiate here. And these are things I'm willing to
Yeah.
bend on and negotiate with you because it's a relationship first, to know what your deal breakers are and to be able to communicate those. And part of that is knowing who you're marrying or who you're in relationship with. That's why you vet, and that's why you have courtship. That's why you date. That's why you have, you know, time to hang out with each other and decide whether to be in long-term relationship, because who you pick is who you pick. I'm not going to pick you. I'm not going to buy a dog if it's going to start purring. I'm not going to buy a cat that gets going to
Exactly.
bark, right? I'm going to pick you
Yeah.
and I'm going to look at you. I'm going to notice you and learn you. And I'm going to decide, okay, I get you. And there's things that maybe I don't necessarily love about, but I accept those things. Maybe you're a smoker and I don't really like the fact that, or maybe you're a different religion than me, or whatever. If they're not deal breakers for me, I accept those things about you. I accept you
Yeah.
wholly as you are today.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
And we remind people
Um,
about that all the time. They come into our office. We're like, you picked each other. You picked her like this. You picked
yeah.
him like this. You picked each other.
Yeah.
So, and now you want them to change.
Yeah.
That's unfair.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I mean, and we typically pick, people who balance us in some way, right? Like we like polarity. Our brain likes novelty. It's exciting. Ooh, you're new and you're different. And then that becomes the thing that drives you the most crazy at the end, which is, oh, I hate that you do that. Why can't you be more like me? Why do you have to be a night owl, or why do you have to do that thing? And so,
Yes.
yeah, I mean, we can't change each other. It is, understanding the person that you're dealing with, and making sure that if it is a deal breaker, if this is a person that you're going to work out your differences with and find that commonality of like, how do we see into each other and get each other even when we're different.
Yeah. Yeah. Bang on for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
The one thing I wanted to say, or just talk about for a few minutes, is verbal communication. So we haven't really touched on the fact that often also couples are coming in very verbally abusive with each other. They're name calling, they're yelling, they're
Threatening.
threatening.
Yes.
Yeah, like actual words threatening, not just their energy and their tone and everything else. But
Yeah.
I guess maybe we could just give a little bit of guidance for people, who are maybe in that kind of situation where they're in a relationship where they're feeling,
Yeah.
it's verbally abusive.
Yeah. Even if it's like 5% or less of your communication, those words still matter. So be mindful of your words. And if you say words you don't mean, repair them quickly, like quickly. Oops, I didn't mean
Really.
to say that. That came out ass backwards. Let me try that again. Like repair them quickly
Yeah.
because your words
Yeah.
matter. I mean, I think
Yeah.
we said this in the secure podcast, the idea of we don't threaten the relationship ever. We don't do that. It's
Yeah.
like, I'm going to burn the
No.
house down that you live in. We don't do that. We don't
Right.
live in fear.
And that is, yeah, for sure. As couple therapists, when we see that happening, that's something that we tune into really quickly because it's a safety and security issue.
Yeah.
So it's like, you can't communicate if that's what you're doing. You're in threat mode, and you're in fight mode. So we can't help you in that. We have to have some parameters as to, there is no name calling, there is no yelling and screaming. These need to be some agreements put in immediately in your relationship, because you cannot work through anything yelling and screaming and swearing and name calling.
Yeah.
It's not possible.
Yeah.
And it's not normal. It's not part of a good relationship.
Yeah, I have a rule and I mean, I have some couples that come from different cultures that are louder and more passionate. That's very different. I have some people that just have louder voices and they get very musical and very passionate when they talk. That's very different. And so kind of the rule in my office is I have usually my dogs like 90% of the time are in the office with me, as they are right now with us. And so if my dogs are getting anxious, I'm like, you're making my dogs anxious. So speak to each other so that my dogs know that you're safe. And the dogs actually know the difference when someone's passionate and talking excited. They get their tail wags and they're like, what's happening? Where when someone are yelling and screaming, they're like, their tails are stopped, not wagging. They're looking like, and they're panting, but it's a fear pant. It's a different, right? They have different response to the different energies in the room for sure. So yeah. So if you have an animal, take a look at your kids, or even though they're in a different room, they're hearing that. So I don't want to create dysregulation in the container, which is my animals, my kids, my environment, my community. I don't want to create dysregulation. So yeah. So some rules around communication that we're going to communicate. And if I can't communicate without yelling and screaming, I'm going to pause and be like, sorry, I can feel my parts. I want to yell. I can feel my parts. I want to punch you. I can feel my parts. I'm going to pause and regulate, right? Just give me a second. I'm going to do my thing. I'm going to tap my fingers. I'm going to put my hand in my chest, do my breathing, listen to music, whatever your thing is to back in that window, and we'll come back and we're going to finish this. Yeah. So I think one of the take homes for that could be, as a couple, for yourself, you can do this individually, for your individual self, what are your rules for yourself around communication? What are your rules in your relationship? Like, how are we going to create some rules, some agreements about, we are going to communicate like this no matter what. I'm never gonna tell you off. Definitely. I'm never gonna call you names.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that couples learn we really stress the agreement piece. Like that's kind of what you and I do a lot with our couples, is like, what are your agreements? And we're going to make sure that we get some. And usually we learn our agreements through our fights, through something that happened. We're like, ooh, let's not do that again. Let's learn from that and not repeat it, because that doesn't make any sense. So I think maybe I have a couple things written down as maybe some takeaway kind of suggestions for people, that this is what some ideas of what some agreements in communication can look like.
Okay.
Let me go. Okay. So and lots of these are just paraphrasing what we just said, but remembering person first, problem second.
Yep.
This one is a massive one. If you can remember person first, you're automatically going to get out of that content and into the other person and be thinking, how do I calm them? What do I need to do to bring their arousal down?
Yeah. And you could add to that, like to add to what you already said earlier, we do that because we're in a container together. We're in an ecosystem together. Yes. So I can be right or I can be in a relationship. I can't often be both. Like to just, that's the
Yes.
reason why we do that agreement. And it's so, so important that if I'm going to fight for my content, I'm going to lose my ecosystem, and then we're both going to drown.
Yeah, exactly. That couple bubble, or like you talk about the ship, right? Yeah. We're on this ship together. So we need to take care of that person.
Yeah.
One thing that we didn't really touch on, but that's something that comes up, is one issue at a time. So typically we stack, right? When we start to get into a content argument, our brain is bringing up everything that validates that memory. And so it's like, you did this then, you did this 10 years ago. So one issue at a time. Good rule.
Yeah. And watch the always and the nevers. You always do that. You never do this. Yeah. Because is that true? Probably not. It's probably your brain embellishing, because you're in fear, in fight or flight. So to some degree, you're in distress. And so you're embellishing to like prove your point, to be defensive. So one issue at a time. You could say, I have 10 issues I want to talk about, but maybe you pause and go, which one right now feels the most important to talk about?
Yeah.
And we said
one,
like,
and try and repair that one issue. I mean, the goal is to, validate, take accountability, do some reassurance, make sure it landed, and then move on to the next one. Make sure that you move through things.
Yeah, move through it. And even if you can't resolve that topic, you could say, well, we've talked about this topic. We need to go back and do some research. We need to ask some questions. We need to go get therapy. We need whatever. But now we know that's on the table, and we're not going to fight about it again until we have whatever you need to have to finish that discussion. So we're going to, so it's still finished loop. It's not going to create, lingering resentment or lingering fear.
Yeah. Yeah. Another one that we didn't talk about that I had heard somewhere along the line in my career was a 48-hour rule, which is, in that day you deal with things. So if something comes up that bothers you in your relationship, you bring it up to your partner within that 24 hours, ideally within 20 minutes, like if it's something serious, but that day, and we don't go past 48 hours. So we're not bringing up past stuff that's historical.
Yeah, I do less even. I mean, that's an okay rule too. I think people can make their own timelines, but I think John Gottman's rule was 12 and 24, which is the hockey rule. If you're a hockey parent, that's the hockey rule.
Yeah.
Right. So you bring it within 12 hours, you bring it up, but you leave, but you don't discuss it for 24 hours. So you like, it's an issue. It makes in the text like, hey, I want to have this meeting, but we don't have the meeting within the first 24 hours. We wait 24 hours to have the meeting so that things can calm down and get clearer heads. Yeah. And so we wait.
Yeah. And I think, Alicia, I'm glad that you brought up a different one too, because this is the goal with these. These are suggestions that we're having, and you're going to negotiate the ones that land for you, where you're like, no, we need to change it. So talk about it. These are just some suggestions. So I'm so glad that you brought that one up, because that is so true. Yeah. Eye contact. Obviously, that's the number one. The most important one is eye contact.
Yeah.
So
face to face, eye to eye. Because I did I think I did a little video about this a long time ago, but fighting beside your partner, because we're wired again for threat. So if you're beside your partner, that's already threatening to your amygdala. Your brain's already picking that up as a threat beside you. So face to face, eye to eye, not side to side. So not in the car, not on the couch.
Yes.
Not the kitchen table, side to side, face to face.
Yep. Yep. Peripheral nervous eye contact. That's we're legally blind that way. So no talking in the car. Yeah. Huge one.
Other than about
no text. Yeah. No text conversation. So that's another one that people tend to do, is they come in and they'll like, I'll show you the text. I'll show you exactly what she said.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, I don't care. We're not doing that. So
no. Well, that goes. So no texting over, like, don't conflict over text. Don't fight over text. It's ridiculous. There's so many ways to misinterpret that. There's just 1,000 ways that can go sideways, which everybody already knows. But also don't tattle. Why are you coming in tattling?
Yeah.
Don't tattle
throwing each other under the bus.
Yeah. So don't tattle to me, your therapist, and don't tattle to your friends or your parents. Like, don't tattle. Right.
Yeah.
If you need help, be like, hey, we're struggling with this thing. We're struggling with this topic. Can you help us with this topic? That's or this, whatever this, but be like, oh, she's an idiot. I'm going to tattle about all the things she did wrong. That's not useful. It's not secure.
No, it's not. And I always use the analogy of teams. Actually, I'm like, do you ever throw like the goalie, under the bus? Like, do you ever say like, oh, he played horrible today. Like, let's all go and gossip and talk about how horrible he is. Like, nobody wants to be on a team with somebody like that. No. You want to be like, hey, let's come together and be like, wow, we did not play well tonight. Like, what happened?
Yeah.
This is a team.
Yeah.
So if you are thinking about being self-righteous, that's a one-person system. That's insecure. Instead, we're going two-person. We're in this together. Yeah. How could we do this better? It will always go better if you say we rather than you.
Always. And in there, you also mentioned the blame thing. Like, it doesn't really serve anybody to blame. If you haven't watched Brene Brown's video on blame, just look it up on YouTube. It's cute. It's funny. It's her personal story about blaming her husband with the coffee thing. You can watch her little video. It's about, again, discharge of emotion that's actually not going to serve your relationship. And I love that her husband just is like, I'm not going there, and clicks on her.
Yeah.
Watch that video. It's a cute one.
That's awesome.
Blame. Watch for the blame.
So good.
Doesn't serve the relationship.
Yeah. Totally. Validating feelings. I know we've gone through this one a lot today, but just a takeaway, you can never over validate somebody. It's not possible. So validate the hell out of them, and they will feel, their arousal will naturally come down, and they will feel seen and heard and understood, which is the goal that we all want in life.
Yeah, for sure. And again, for another little point of research, if you want to look this up, they can Google or on YouTube Imago therapy or Imago communication skills. And it's like a master validation skill. So you just can Google Imago. It's Harville Hendricks' work. You can just Google that and it'll show you the technique, which is kind of what we did a little bit of, just like, so what I'm hearing from you, Dana, is this: I'm just going to keep being curious and keep exhausting your story and validating your experience until I've heard the whole thing. So that's another research I can go look up.
Exactly. That's brilliant. Thanks, Alicia, for saying that. Taking accountability. So if you don't take accountability, you can't build trust. So if I don't take accountability, that the way that I looked at you even, or how I rolled my eyes, if I don't take accountability for that, then you can't trust me. You don't feel safe with me. Even if I didn't mean to, even if I was like, I didn't roll my eyes. I honestly just had something in my eye. That is invalidating. And then you're not feeling safe. So instead saying, maybe I really wasn't fully aware of that, but I can tell that how I rolled my eyes landed as threatening to you. And I'm so sorry. You have every right to feel threatened by that. I'm so sorry. I will be really conscious of that.
Yeah. Or I'll let you know next time I have a bug in my eye, I'm about to roll them. So I get the bug out of my eye. Right. So I'm going to, but it's builds trust, because it's building, I see you and I trust you, actually, that your experience you're telling me that was hurtful or stressful is your truth. Because by saying, I didn't roll my eyes, or I didn't do that, or I did, but, or sorry, those words where you're like, I'm sorry, but it's just, I don't trust you, because now I don't trust that you're actually hearing anything I'm saying. And there's not any growth in our relationship. So there's 1,000 reasons why that creates mistrust, but own your shit. I say that in my office so many times: own your shit, own your shit. It's so powerful for your relationship. It's so powerful for yourself and for the other person. Just own your shit.
Yes. And you're right, Alicia. It just makes you feel more connected to who you are. Also, you're like, okay, I noticed that I have those other little parts, and we're not perfect, and we're not here to be shamed. We're just here to be seen and heard and understood. Even the parts of us that sometimes we don't love. Notice them, take accountability.
Just that part that you just said about shame. I never thought of that, but you're right. Because when you own your shit, you give voice to your shit, which means I can't be in shame. Shame's in silence. Shame is in, I'm going to hide it. I'm going to quit. When I'm like, I do sometimes have a part that gets angry. I do have this thing that's, whatever, that my anxiety or whatever, the parts that I don't necessarily, understand fully maybe sometimes. But if I own my shit and I give it accountability to myself, I'm not in shame. That's powerful, actually.
It is. And if your partner is shaming you, this would be a good time to go into couple therapy. Find a good couples therapist, because you don't want to keep that pattern going, because that will create massive insecurity and threat. So
shame is kind of a relationship death as well, just like resentment can be.
Yes, definitely. Along that, kind of just being aware of your own self-arousal, right? Like what is going on for me and what is going on for my partner. So this kind of dance of being very aware of our own energy inside of us, our own regulation and arousal, and our partners. So that big piece of communication, just being very aware of that. And communicating that to your partner.
Absolutely. Which is a hard ask, but it's an important ask to be like, I'm aware of my window of tolerance. I'm aware of where I am in that window, and I'm watching all of their nonverbals and when they're out of it, I'm not going to keep talking. Right. And when they're out of it, I'm going to do stuff to give permission to be like, do you need a second? Can I or I'll soften my voice. I'll maybe take a breath and relax to get them to relax with me. Like I'm going to do things to get them back in their window and support them when they're out of their window, and vice versa with self. So it's a big ask, but it's a really important one. So it's one of those master skills. It's a skill that I would say is a master skill that's really important in communication and in life, actually.
Yeah. And you're going to practice this in a couple, or even as a parent, where you might notice that your kid or your partner is kind of in a free state, or in kind of an anger or something. And do you move towards them softly and touch them? Do you not touch them because they don't like touch? Do you instead just give them a soft look and say, I know you're frustrated. You have every right to feel frustrated. You have to play around with figuring out what's going to land for them, but don't give up. People, I think, often too much just go, well, I'm just going to give them space.
Yeah.
Don't.
Yeah.
That's
Again,
not necessarily, some people, they like the space, but don't leave the room. Stay
yeah.
around them and be like, I'm just going to sit over here and be really close to you and just let you know I'm here. I'm a safe base, but I'm going to give you the space.
Yeah. I'm not abandoning you. Again, we refer Dan Siegel all the time, but Dan Siegel's connect to redirect, connect, then
Yes.
redirect. So connect. So how does your
Yes.
partner, person, kid need connection? What is their language of connection?
Exactly. Exactly. Creating win-win, another one just for communication, like that the goal is always that we're both winning in some way, that it's not that, you know, in our little preamble that we did of negotiating the cat, it was like, what's win-win look like for us? So it doesn't feel like you're getting all the power, all of the control. We're balancing that.
Yeah. So
Mutuality.
just to clarify, win doesn't actually mean like I win, like it's not 100%. That's not what win
No.
means. Win means the relationship wins. The relationship wins. And so I might have to concede some stuff to make sure the relationship wins, because that's most important. So win for me, and I say win-win, it's we both agree that the relationship wins first, always.
Yeah.
And so how do we
Yeah.
negotiate whatever content it is, whatever it is, so that the relationship wins? So that we're both
Yeah.
servants of here.
Yeah. Exactly. I always tell my couples too, and I probably have said this in a different podcast, but I always think whenever there's some kind of stress in my relationship in terms of communication or whatever's going on, I just think of a neon sign above my head that says, if my relationship comes first, what do I do?
What do I do?
And it always will lead me back to, oh, okay, I need to do this thing, whatever it is.
Right.
But it's always direction. It's a path that is very clear. So
Yeah.
remembering relationship first will always help with communication.
And just to acknowledge, both of our nonverbals were very loud right there. Just to acknowledge that's a real pain in the ass sometimes. It is.
Oh, yeah.
You speak your truth and own your right. My parts are like, it's so much work sometimes for in a second, because I'm busy or I'm stubborn or whatever. But when you just actually put the skill in and do it, it's much smoother sailing from there. It's way easier to put that deposit in that account quickly, even though it's a pain in the ass.
Yes.
Welcome to being in relationships, because it doesn't then fester and create problems later on.
Yes, totally. It's funny. I'm just going to say this because it's just happened today. I was at the grocery store with my 6-year-old, and she was being a pain and wanting my phone. And I was like, no, no. And then I took the phone and she started to cry. I grabbed it from her pretty aggressively. I was like, no. And and she was crying, and I was like, well, you weren't being good. So I took the phone away. Like, this is a consequence. So I was really focused on the problem and not her. And she started to cry. And she's like, I just need you to calm me down. Just calm me down. And she knows to use her words with that. And I'm like, okay. And she put her arms up, and I was like, let me calm you down. And then it was person first. But for about 3.5 minutes, I was in internal rage where I was like, no, I'm not doing this for you. This is about me. You were bad. I'm good. And then I mean, she did that plea, and I was thinking relation first. So there's no bar of perfection here. You're going to have these times where you're going to be very irritated with your partner or your kid, and that is totally okay.
Normal. Welcome to life. Absolutely. Like we said at the very beginning, we're all pains in the asses. We're all annoying. It just is what it is. But you can lessen the length of the annoyingness by taking care of the relationship first. That's just take it as truth. We're telling you it's truth. Put the deposits in, take care of the relationship first. Your life will be easier. That's how relationships get easy.
Yes, exactly. And parts language, which I know we've talked about in different times too, in different episodes, but even in that situation with my daughter, she said to me, you were frustrated. And I said, yeah, a part of me was frustrated with you. Yeah. Another part of me totally understood why you wanted the phone. You were bored. Yeah. So that language can be very clear.
Yeah. Yeah.
Another piece just with this parts is just connecting with your partner's inner child. Like, I think that I always say to clients, think of the younger part of your client or your partner, right? When you're kind of aroused, if you kind of go, okay, I'm going to see like the little 5-year-old part of him right now. Like, I soften. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, right. I'm not so irritated with you.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'll use kids, sometimes in my office as like that metaphor. I'll be like, if this was your 5-year-old child right now in the room, would you see that? No. I'm like, but you do that to your partner because they're an adult. But yet when we're in distress, we revert to our parts, right? And sometimes I'm in my 5-year-old self having a 5-year-old reaction because I'm feeling the same rejection from you that I felt from my mom or whatever it is. Like, right. So yeah, I love that. There's actually a statue that I've seen someplace in some kind of a Google search where it has like the two adult parts and they're facing each other the opposite ways, and their little kids inside are trying to find each other. It's a really cool, cute. Yeah, it's a cool like wire statue. I have to find it again and put it on the show notes. But yeah, if you can pause and be like, this partner of mine is in a part and I can find that young part of them, I can love on that young part and I can actually have empathy and compassion always more for a kid than for this adult,
Yes.
big adult body.
Definitely. And that kind of leads into one of the last ones. There's two more here, but one of them is leading with relief. So when
Yes.
you lead, ideally we want both partners to be on board with doing this kind of stuff, but you really can lead in your relationship with, I'm going to start to change the way that my mannerism is, my energy, my tone, everything. And I'm going to just lead the way in this relationship. And usually people will follow. Usually people soften pretty quickly when you start to do these things.
Yeah. Well, like with the cat thing, right? Like I know our debate about cats was going to be like, you don't want a cat. So I'm like, I'm going to lead with no matter what. And it's authentic. I'm not trying to manipulate you. It's no matter what, we're good. Like I actually adore you and love you so much. So no matter what the outcome of this discussion is, we're still good. That's leading with relief. So I'm already going to tell you, no matter what the content is, that there's nothing that's going to wreck our bubble. We're still safe and secure. That's relief.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay?
That is so great.
So there's tons of ways to soften those discussions. Like no matter what happens, I love you. I might disagree with you. I might hate pink shirts, Dana, but I'm going to love you anyways, or whatever it is. Like I'm just going to lead with relief and be creative with that. There's so many ways to lead with relief.
Oh, totally. And that leads into the last one, which is role play with each other. Like these are things that you want to keep practicing. I had a couple today and they were trying to practice protect and defend because the in-laws kind of were attacking her and she's like, you don't protect and defend me. And he's just such a quiet kind of guy and he just kind of avoids and I was just giving them situations over and over again, just silly situations. And he was like, and she's like, okay, we have to keep practicing this. And I was like, yes, be playful with it. Practice, role play.
Yeah. We call these skills for a reason, right? So you learn how to ride a bike when you're what, 4, I don't know, right? But if I was to go like jump on my mountain bike right now, I have to like take a couple of loops around the block before I jump on the mountain. Like I practice these skills because they get rusty. So you got to practice your skills. Even though I think I know how to communicate, I've been doing it my whole life, but you're practicing the skills to get better because it's an important foundation of your relationship. It's one of the, like we said, we picked it today because it's one of the main reasons people come into our office. They come in for all kinds of things, but we're like, actually, you're miscommunicating. You're not actually on the same page. You're speaking French and you're speaking Greek and you're not even connecting at all.
Yes. Yeah. Or there's threat in the communication or just the nonverbal is so loud. I mean, and sometimes it is just hard to change that. I guess that's just, we can just say that it's hard to change communication. It's hard to change the nonverbal, but you can't change what you don't acknowledge. So acknowledge your role, take accountability for your role in this. And you could even come to your partner and say, hey, I notice I do these things and I'm really aware of them and I want to change them. So I just want you to know that.
Yeah. Think of it like a dance. Like we're doing this dance together and for whatever reason, our dance is off step. So let's figure out what steps we need to take to make this dance more smooth. And if you don't know, that's what we're here for. People like us, or find a coach or a therapist in your community that can help you, assess the dance you're doing that's not working. Because maybe you're so in it and you're trying your best and you just don't even know what steps are off. So we've given you some, we've given you some things to look for. We've given you some like landmines to look for, like not validating, not listening, not paying attention, not tuning in, prosody, voice, tone. We've given you all these kind of things to look for. If you still really have no idea, that's okay. I'll go ask somebody, ask a third person to help us assess and give us 5 minutes in office with you and I'll watch you, right? You do the same thing with your couples. Come in and I'm like, go, let me see you. Often I'll be the first thing I do. They'll be like, here's our goals. I'm like, okay, tell me about that. Show me in real time. Talk about your goals in real time. And they're like, I'm like, talk to each other. I want to see how you communicate with each other.
And they freeze. They don't know how. And actually, as you're saying that's a good little homework thing that we can tell people as a thing to try with your partner to test out some of this for, I don't know how many minutes it's a good idea to suggest this, but to just be eye to eye, don't say anything at all. So you can't use your words and don't chew gum and don't try and make the other person laugh. Just gaze into your partner's eyes. I mean, we usually do it for about a minute. I don't know if you would suggest doing longer or not, Alicia, but that will give you information as to everything that's going on internally, because some people over communicate with their words and they're not letting kind of everything that's happening internally go on, because talking is a way to self-regulate.
Absolutely. Yeah. So minutes, everyone's so different. So I usually start with a minute as well with people, because just like, if I was to just like, we're kind of not in the same rooms, it's harder, but I could be like, oh, I can just see like, there's no white in your eyes right now. And I see your face and now it's smiling, and I'm watching like your breathing, and I'm watching your skin color. Like I'm watching all the parts of your whole face and neck as I'm looking at you change colors and settle. And I'm actually, gonna, what I would probably do in the real time is like, want to be like, how can I soften her? How can I like soothe her? And how can I in real time without my voice, just like use my face to like, because those mirror neurons are going to pick up on those nonverbals. If people can handle a minute and they want to, experience it deeper, go longer. If you can go longer, go 2 minutes, go 3 minutes. If you can handle longer, because you're going to get into a nice rhythm. It's actually a really nice way to fall asleep. It's a nice way to have have better nights, because it's going to actually get you out of your head, out of your thinking brain, into a mind that's right, like a present moment. So it's mindfulness essentially. And if you can get into that state before you fall, you're in better sleep for sure. So it's a good nighttime routine.
Yes. And if you've never done this before, try it first in the daytime, because it may also bring up a lot of stuff at nighttime for some couples where they're like, oh my gosh, there's so many things that I didn't recognize that is going on for me. But just the eye contact is, those are, our eyes are our windows to our nervous system. So this is where you are really going to start to notice what's really going on with you. And each other. So absolutely, that's a little takeaway homework to try.
Yeah. I'll give you one more. So once you've mastered that one, master and play with the art of nonverbal communication with your body language. So try something like, get your partner to come towards you without, I'm just giving you hints here, right? Without using words, to be like, right. Or practice the art of flirting without words, just using your body language to flirt, or practice the art of looking like you're in distress. Like you need something, you need them to talk to you without using words. Like you can role play any of these things, but you can play with some ideas, different ways of like, I'm going to practice communicating with you without my words.
Yes, that's beautiful. All of these things. I mean, if couples are willing to put the time in and the investment of just, I often tell my couples, like even 5 minutes a day, the goal, I mean, I think is awesome. If you can do 20 minutes a day, face to face, just connecting with each other, talking, but even 5 minutes just to be like, let's just tune back into each other, plug in.
Yeah.
So connection heals.
Yeah, for sure. It's a ship, or it's a plant. If you don't water it, it's going to die. If you don't repair it, it's going to sink. It needs time. It needs space. And people say, I don't have time. Like, that's an excuse. Everyone's busy. We're all busy. So you have to make the time. 5 minutes is not too much to ask for. And most authors that I read require a lot more than that. If you look at the research, they're asking for a lot more than 5 minutes. So we're just giving you a real basic, like 5 minutes a day. There's zero excuse why you can't put in 5 minutes a day.
Yeah. And I always say too, like, think of your relationship like a business. So if you only invested 5 minutes a day into your business, how successful would it be?
Right.
It'd be not so good. Yeah, I mean, and the only thing that is universal is time. We all have the same amount of time in a day anyway, not necessarily on the earth, but stop making excuses, take some accountability, and
own your shit,
and start to have a bit of a vision in this relationship of how this communication can work. That was kind of our goal today, is just to touch into, this is what communication can look like. These are some tools, some takeaways. And if you need more help, find somebody that you can see for a couple's work.
You betcha. And also reach out to us, DM us, and whatever you're watching this on. I actually don't know even how to read the comments. So if you could be so kind and to either message us on YouTube, because I know how to find those ones, or on Instagram or Facebook. Those are probably the three I know how to get messages on. Be really great. Or find our emails if you want. But I'd love to hear feedback as to what you're struggling with in communication and what maybe you need more feedback on, or other topics in general. Like I don't even know who's watching the podcast. I have no idea, because I don't get to see I don't know how to see the results. So it'd be great if I get some feedback as to, this was informative, I need to know this more, or we didn't really understand this piece, or can you talk about this next time? We're here to serve you guys. So please send us your messages and ask us what you need. Right? Have boundaries, have self-love, ask what you need, communicate with us.
Yes, totally. Yeah. I mean, that's why we're doing this, right? I mean, we want to be able to, not everybody can access therapy. Not everybody can
afford
do this work. Yeah, exactly. But this is free. So please use us as much as we can help. That's our goal.
Yeah. We're here for sure. We're here to serve. Awesome. Okay.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for being on Zoom with me, Dana.
Thanks so much for joining us.
We're really glad you're here with us on this journey.
The best way to support this podcast is to subscribe and give it a 5-star review.
See you next time.
This has been a Bread Dog Studios production.